Hey guys, in this tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make this meat pie cake tutorial. So I've started off with some Saraceno. I've just got the skin tone one and added a bit of chestnut. We're just going to make the fingers. So I'm just making the fingertips. You want to roll a sausage, and then we're just going to flatten down not flatten down, but kind of round it off so it kind of gives the impression of a fingertip kind of shape. So you can refer to your own fingers at this point just to get that rough scoop at the back of the nail. I did 2 fingers for this one, but you could do more fingers or you could do toes if you really wanted to. This was for a collaboration for musicals, and I chose to do Sweeney Todd, hence the pie. So I've got a Dresden tool, and I'm just going to mark in where the nail bed is going to go. So at this point I'm just sort of flattening it out and putting in a rough shape. Now we are going to put a nail over there, which will obviously make it look a lot more realistic than just pushing that bit down. You're going to do this for both fingers, and if you was doing a toe you would make it a little bit shorter, a little bit wider, and obviously the nail bed would need to be a lot bigger as well and a little bit more square. Just taking a small amount of fondant and I'm just pressing it into an oval shape and flattening it off the top. Now it doesn't have to be too neat, because when we pop it in to the nail bed that we've made, we'll be able to push it into where we need it to go. So just using your modelling tool, I've got I can't remember the name of this now, I'll put the link in the description box below. But I'm using that and my Dresden tool just to push it in at the bottom, because you kind of want the nail to sit in the nail bed and not just sit on the top of the finger. And just going over the boundaries for the nail bed and just smoothing it over. Now this is going to be covered in blood, so it doesn't have to be too neat, and there doesn't have to be too much detail on there either, because you're not going to really see it because of all the blood that's there. So just tucking in the side of the nail beds, you have to remember that your nail is rounded. It doesn't just sit flat on top of the nail, it's got a little bit of a curve to it as well. And then we're just going to mark in some rough lines. As you can see from my fingers, they're not smooth at all. You just want to mark in some rough lines where your finger would bend, underneath the nail bed, at the side of the fingers where your fingers would naturally crease if you was to fold them. You don't have to be too heavy-handed with this. And then we're going to make it look like it's severed. So just a small ball tool, and we're just going to poke it in where we've chopped the base off. Now you want that to look a bit ragged and jagged, because obviously it's a severed finger. This would make a great cake for a Halloween cake, something a little bit unusual. So if you manage to push anything out of place at this point, you can re-go over it. With Saraceno you can do it at any time really, but obviously once it's got the blood on it gets a little bit messy. So just smoothing over the edges. So here's one I've covered in blood already. Now this is actually lemon drizzle, and I've just added some red in there. So it's literally some brown caster sugar and a lemon squeezed in there and just cooked over the pan. And I've just added some Sugar Flare Red Velvet to that. And then I've also added some burgundy, because obviously blood's not all one colour, you want some parts to be a little bit darker than others. So the darker parts I'm applying with a smaller brush, just to sort of get in that detail. I've given it a bit of a bloody nail, like it's been ripped off, and then just some blood smears over the finger. Now, in case you didn't know the story about Sweeney Todd, it's about a barber who kills people, and then somebody makes the pies that contain body parts in there. So you could really have fun and put some different body parts in if you wanted to. I actually made this not only for the collaboration but for my birthday cake as well. So just going over and adding bits of blood as and where you feel necessary. Now the same colour for the skin, for the fingers I've got here, and I've just added a little bit of pink to that, and I'm going to make a tongue. So a very loosely shaped tongue. You're going to mark a line down the middle, and then again you're going to pull out the bottom bit just like you did with the finger, and it needs to be sort of rough edged and to make it look like it's been severed and chopped off and stuff like that. Again, it doesn't have to be very detailed because it is going on the cake and it's going to get covered in blood as well. So you really don't need to spend hours on these pieces. I've got a bit of a rough brush and I'm just going to put that over the tongue, stipple it, and that's just going to give it a bit of a texture, more of a tongue, and leave it so it's not as smooth. So do down the sides as well and a little bit underneath. And then just you're going to pop it on the side just to dry. It shouldn't take too long, Saraceno, to firm up. But again, we're going to put some blood on there as well. So put it in the position that you want it to dry in. I've left it a little bit curvy just so that it's not exactly the same position as everything else, and there's a little bit of movement in the cake. And you're just going to use the lemon drizzle just to fill in the bit where it's been cut off. But then also you want to do some little flecks and stuff as well around the tongue. Now the cake flavour that I did was lemon and blueberry, hence the reason why I've got lemon drizzle. If you didn't want to use lemon drizzle, you could use normal syrup and just colour that. That works the same as well. But I just felt like because the cake was lemon drizzle, well, it's lemon and blueberry that I add a drizzle sauce to, then, you know, it just made sense to use the extra drizzle for this. So just some little splashes of blood on the tongue. Again, remembering to use some of the darker colours and the lighter colours as well. So now I've got a 6-inch cake. Now it's quite sticky because obviously I've put the lemon drizzle over the top. I've only baked one single layer of cake, so I think it's just over maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in thickness. It peaks up at the top, and I've left that peak there because I don't want the pie to be flat. I want it to sort of come up in the middle a little bit. And I'm just trimming down and in just to take off the edges so that the pie comes in at the side. Now, it's not an exact science that I've done. I'm just trimming off little bits and going around because I want the pie to look quite messy and bulgy and, you know, like it has actually got body parts in the pie. So once you're happy with your rough size, we're going to pop it on a board and take out a section in the middle. And this is just going to be where the pie looks like it's being cut open. Now, usually I ganache my cakes, but for this one, I chose buttercream because, again, I wanted to be able to indent the top of the pie just to make it look really lumpy. Now, you could cover the board first if you wanted to do that, but I just totally forgot to cover the board first. So I'm applying quite a thick layer of buttercream on the top. I've not split the cake in half and frosted in between, just because obviously the cake is quite shallow and I've put quite a lot of buttercream on the top anyway, so even if you was to cut the cake, you're going to get some of the filling anyway, and I didn't want it to be just filling. So you're just going to pop the buttercream all the way around the cake. Again, generous amount for the top, just so that when we put the fondant on top, that we can use our fingers just to make indentations to give it that lumpy effect. I didn't refrigerate this at any point. I literally just put the buttercream on and then applied the fondant. I think if you was to put it in the fridge, it's going to make it a little bit crispy for when we cover it. So I've just taken some of my skin tone that I had left over, and I'm just rolling out a thin section, and this is going to go around the side of the pie first. If you do the side first and then the top, it allows us to leave a little bit extra so that we can do this sort of finger crimping around the side of the pie. So I'm just going to take off the excess on the bottom and then level it off on the top as well, trying to cut it a little bit deeper than what the actual cake is so that I can trim it down and then obviously leave myself a little bit of excess. So you're just going to wrap that around the base area, and then just with some scissors we're going to trim off the excess. Now I would leave it maybe about 1/2 centimetre above the top of the cake. Now it doesn't have to be too neat because this is going to be crimped with the bit that we put on top anyway. You just want to make sure that it's stuck down and you've got a little bit of a playroom at the top. So next we've rolled out a piece of fondant for the top. Now I'm going to cut out the section for the pie so it's just got somewhere to sit on, and I know whereabouts it's going to go. And again, just letting it fall quite loosely and trimming off the excess all the way around, and then just pushing it together with your fingers, and that's going to give it the crimped effect that these pies generally have. If you do it whilst you're working your way around, it can kind of hold the two together as well. So this is all quite rough. It doesn't need to be too neat because obviously we want it to look like a, you know, sort of like a really old-fashioned rustic pie. So just pinching those together, and you can see already that it's getting that kind of look that we're going for. So just trimming off any excess that you feel doesn't need to be there. And just re-going over any areas you feel may need it. So just going over at the top with your fingers, just to put in some lumps and bumps. Again, I said I didn't want it to be totally flat or totally rounded. We want to make it look like it's got some gory stuff in there. And home cooked pies are never really flat on the top anyway. Marking in two pieces at the top just for where the steam would come out of the pie. And then I've just taken some brown and we're just going to cover the board. Now I have got a proper tutorial on how to make a wooden effect. For this one I've just coloured some brown. I'm just going to wrap it around the pie and blend in the areas where it's actually joining. Just got a flexi smoother and that's what I'm doing with it there. Just blending in that area. I will put a link at the end of the video just to the tutorial for the wood effect, so you can watch that in more detail if you want. For this one I've just coloured it all in one colour of brown. I've not mixed it properly and that's why it's got a little bit of a streak to it. But in the other tutorial I'll show you how to get a proper wood grain effect for your fondant. So we're going to mark in some lines as if it's on kind of like I guess a floorboard. And then we're just going to mark in some wooden sort of like grooves for the wood as well. Shouldn't take too long. If you was doing this board before you put the cake on there, then I would recommend doing it sort of like the night before and then putting the pie on top. Otherwise it can get quite messy if the fondant's still stuck. So I've put some of my fingers and my tongue in there. I made a little bit of an intestine as well, and I'm just covering that bit with the lemon drizzle blood that we've got. So just using quite a big brush, and you want to cover the majority of the area. So making sure that you can't see any of the sort of light brown colour that we had before, and making sure you really get into the nooks and crannies. You can add some extra blood around the bottom just to make it look like, you know, the blood is spilling out of the pie as well. And just making sure you cover everything. Now you start off with the light, cover everything in the light, and then you can actually go and add some of the darker burgundy colour just to give it a bit of depth so that it doesn't look flat and all one colour. You can put little bits of blood splatter on the board as well. Like, it doesn't matter if some of this drips on the board while you're doing it because it just adds to the effect. So now with some darker burgundy colour, maybe a little bit of dark brown. If you don't have burgundy, you could add dark brown, it has the same effect. But just popping that in and around the finger, making it look like there's a pool of blood there as well. So for the pie, I've got some Trex, and I've got some dark brown and some golden brown, and I'm just mixing those together and pasting it on top really. You could use an airbrush if you wanted to. I just find that this is the easiest way to do it and to get a better sort of like texture, to make it look a bit more laminated like a pie would. If you think about when you make a pie, put an egg wash on the top, and this just gives it that effect that you wouldn't necessarily get if you was to airbrush it and let it dry. So obviously using the light brown over the majority of the pie, and then the dark brown for the edges where it'll be a little bit burnt, or in the middle where you've got the air holes from as well. I will put a link to everything in the description box below, so you can know exactly what I've used. And if you do have any questions or anything, feel free to ask in the comments section down below. I do have a private Facebook group called Cake Nation Academy. You can feel free to join that as well. And if you did want to join any of the collaborations that we have going on at the minute, then if you have a look on Facebook for Sugar Junkies, and you'll be able to see our upcoming collaborations as well. So in this video I've only got me doing the top. I did do the sides as well, but it's a bit difficult for you to see at this angle. So just remember that once you've done this bit, you do have to do the sides of the pie as well. Got some blood, and I'm just going to put that in the air holes on the top, just to make it look like the pie is actually oozing blood as well. If you do make a mistake like I did there, just with a dry brush, just pull it down and it will take it off. And then I've just got some dark brown, and I'm just going to go around and colour the board, just to again add it a little bit more depth and texture to it. You don't really taste the Trex on top of the cake either. Won't take long to dry, and when it does dry it does still leave a little bit of a shine, which is nice because, like I say, it gives the pie a laminated look. So once you've finished, you should have something that looks like this. I hope you've liked today's video. If you have, please hit the subscribe button and comment down below. If you'd like to see some more of my tutorials, please click the links on the screen now. Thanks for watching.